Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Brittany Schoenfelder. Today, I will walk you through my exploratory study of spatiotemporal patterns of behavioral and opportunistic crime in Denver, Colorado from 2020 to 2025. So my goal here is to create an interactive dashboard that allows users to explore crime trends across Denver neighborhoods with a focus on how behavioral and opportunistic crime motivations may shift in response to broader societal changes over time. So I'll begin with some background on Denver and my reasons for selecting it as my study area. I'll explain the types of crime under analysis, the data and methods used, and how I transformed raw data sets into interactive visuals using GIS tools. I'll also share key takeaways, limitations, and ideas for future research. So I chose Denver, Colorado as my study area for several reasons. First being that it is my childhood home. So I've been fascinated to see how it's evolved and changed over the years, both socially and geographically. Denver is the state capital of Colorado. It is the 5th most populous state capital in the United States, with a population of about 715,000 at the 2020 census, and that number just continues to grow. Denver also has a unified city-county jurisdiction. This means the city and county share the same boundaries and governing structure, ensuring consistent geocoded data at the tract level. So I'll point to the visuals on the slide. You can see Colorado is situated in the United States, and the Denver City County highlighted in the Colorado state map in the center. That topographic map of Colorado shows us that Denver is nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains to the west. So to take a closer look at the county, I've overlaid the county shapefile onto an OpenStreetMap base map for more context. And I just like to point out here that and I like to grab my laser pointer here, if I can. I just like to point out that there is a major US interstate that goes straight through Denver. It wraps around the west of the city center here, where we'll see a lot of activity in the coming slides. But north of the city center, also the Platte River runs parallel to I-25, just to the west of the city center. But north of that, we see another major US interstate intersect with I-25. This is I-70, takes us out east through this industrial area of the county, which is made up of a lot of rail yards and things of that nature. So going out further east, we reach the Denver International Airport, which you can see is a part of Denver County. So this weird kind of arm outreach towards the east is DIA. It's included in the county. And if I bring in census tract boundaries, you can see that DIA is in a tract of its own. And I've got some smaller tracts here in the city center, near the city center, that we'll be paying close attention to in the coming slides. Okay. As such a diverse and populous city, Denver sees a broad spectrum of criminal activity shaped by different underlying motivations. The city of Denver provides public access to crime data through their open data portal. So I acquired a data set covering reported criminal activity from 2020 through 2025, which contained details about each incident. To explore the underlying motivations per crime type, I grouped reported crimes into 2 broad categories based on their likely motivational drivers, behavior and opportunity. So behavioral crimes are categorized primarily by interpersonal conflict, emotional escalation, or impulsive acts of aggression, often occurring between individuals with a pre-existing relationship or in high-stress situations. Offenses categorized as behavioral include assault, arson, drug and alcohol offenses, murder, domestic violence, stalking, harassment, and disorderly conduct. Opportunistic crime tends to be more situational or committed when conditions allow, with a perceived low risk of being caught. These offenses are often property-related or financially motivated and include auto theft, burglary, robbery, larceny, and white-collar crimes such as fraud. So this attribute table, the screen grab on my slide here is of an attribute table that I took from ArcGIS Pro. The Denver crime data, you can see in the left column here, they categorize by offense category ID. I went ahead and created a new field called crime type to further categorize these crimes into the 2 more broad categories, behavioral and opportunistic. And then I've got a crime count on the final column there. So Denver's open data portal provides crime data covering the past 5 years. Given that time frame, I was especially interested in how crime motivations may have shifted throughout the pandemic. My goal was to understand how this major social disruption may have affected crime motivators across Denver neighborhoods. For added temporal and social context, I determined 4 distinct phases of the pandemic, based on the COVID-19 timeline and response phases in Colorado. So as the timeline on this slide illustrates, the pandemic phases are totally unequal in length and cannot be used for direct comparison, but instead provide a social backdrop for exploring trends over time. So to ensure comparability across the study period, I further divided the data into calendar quarters. This approach standardized each time unit, allowing me to normalize crime rates across equal length time periods, making it easier to detect consistent trends over time. So these pandemic phases are overlaid just to contextualize the data. Here is a model view of my workflow and the tools used along the way. I began with data acquisition, so I downloaded crime data from the Denver Open Data Portal and census data from the US Census Bureau. And then I took it into Excel for preliminary cleaning. So I filtered to relevant attributes and formatted data fields for quarterly grouping. Then I brought it into ArcGIS Pro for spatial processing. So I performed spatial joins to aggregate crime incidents by census tract and created new fields to classify crime type, assign calendar quarters, and assign pandemic phases. And then I was able to normalize crime rates by calculating crime rates per 1,000 people, and I calculated fields for calendar quarters as well. And then I was ready to export as a shapefile for use in Tableau. And Tableau provided an ideal platform for this project. It's interactive, intuitive, and it allows users to filter and explore the crime data. So here's a screenshot of one of the dashboards I created in Tableau. And as you can see, I've chosen the color blue to represent behavioral crime rates and orange to represent opportunistic crime rates. So let me show you how this works in action. We'll enter Tableau Public here, and we land on my stories title page. So you see the title of my study here with a brief breakdown of each crime type that we're looking at here and examples. And you can see my story is made up of several dashboards here. So let's start with the first. This first dashboard has side-by-side maps comparing average behavioral crime rates per 1,000 people by date. So these maps share a legend, as you can see at the bottom, and they each have a date filter. I will filter this first map to the first quarter of 2020, which is pre-lockdown. This second map I'll filter to the third quarter of 2020, which is a few months into the lockdown period of COVID. And you can see my map has updated accordingly. So we can see that behavioral crime rates are elevated near the city center, which is kind of to be expected. And my hover tool here shows us the COVID phase, date, and average crime rate of the census tract that I'm hovering over. And if I compare that to the lockdown phase of COVID, this map, we can see elevated crime rates near the city center, as well as some of these outlying tracts to the north in the industrial regions and out towards the airport even. My next dashboard is very similar, but we're looking at opportunistic crime rates here. So these maps share a legend at the bottom, and they each have a date filter. So I'll filter this first map to that third quarter of 2020, which is the lockdown phase. We see my map update accordingly. And I will compare that to the fourth quarter of 2020, which is actually transitioning out of the lockdown phase. So during the lockdown phase, you can see elevated crime rates along this corridor formed by the I-25 and Platte River running here. Elevated crime rates all along that region, as well as in the city center, and some of these outlying tracts to the north in the more industrial phase areas, as well as out by the airport. This is the lockdown phase. In the comparison map, this is the transitional phase where we're coming out of lockdown after COVID. You see reduced crime rates all along that corridor, including in the city center, although we still see some elevated crime rates out in that industrial area and by the airport. My next dashboard compares behavioral crime rates to average opportunistic crime rates. So each of these maps has a legend of their own, but they are comparable by range. And we can filter both maps by the same date drop-down selector. So I'll select the first quarter of 2024. You see both of my maps updated accordingly, as well as the bar chart to go along with them. My hover tool works just the same, except for in this map, I can select an individual census tract. It will zoom to that same tract in the opposing map so that we can really take a look at more tract level data, and my bar chart updates accordingly. And this works both ways. I can highlight a tract in the opportunistic map, and it will zoom in on that on the behavioral map and update the bar chart accordingly. So my final dashboard is a line chart comparing citywide average crime rates by calendar quarter and year. And my hover tool works the same here. If I hover over a data point, it will give me the crime type, date, COVID phase, and average crime rate of that particular data point. So Tableau proves to be a valuable tool for creating these interactive visuals. Some key findings. There appear to be some seasonal trends in crime rates. For example, we can observe that crime rates in both types of crime tend to dip in the fourth and first quarters of each year. This could be explained, I believe, by weather trends. So the winter and spring seasons in Denver tend to be very snowy and cold, restricting criminal activity. We also see a slight spike in both crime types from the second quarter to the third quarter of 2020, but a significant spike in opportunistic crime at this juncture. So this period is notably when lockdowns went into effect in Denver, indicating that perhaps this societal disruption impacted both crime types, but had a more significant impact on opportunistic crime rates. And then at the tract level, we observed rising opportunistic crime rates throughout and surrounding the city center, along the corridor formed by the Platte River and I-25, and in the northern industrial area of the county. There was a sharp increase in the overall average opportunistic crime rate at the onset of the COVID-19 lockdown phase. Behavioral crime rates remained relatively steady across phases, with a spike during the lockdown period as well. This could be explained by societal pressures of the lockdown, which forced people to stay at home and could have resulted in heightened emotions affecting interpersonal conflict. So these patterns suggest that the pandemic affected crime types differently, which could inform future urban planning or policing strategies in the case of another major societal disruption in the future. Some limitations of this study include incomplete or inconsistent crime reporting. The free web interface of Tableau Public does not support spatial joins, calculated fields, or live data connections. That's in a paid-for version. Also, my crime classification here may be too broad. If we narrowed that down, we might uncover more of the story here. And we could focus in on the COVID timeline. My COVID phase periods are not comparable. So narrowing that study time frame could give us a more focused view on the COVID timeline. That brings me to opportunities for future work, including expanding my study area to the larger metro area, performing regression analysis, comparing to crime rate trends in other cities, focusing more on that COVID timeline, and maybe animating a visual to show trends over time. But to wrap up, this interactive dashboard is a valuable tool for comparing crime data filtered by time and type. Its dynamic filtering capabilities enabled intuitive visual exploration of patterns, revealing both seasonal trends and potential connections of crime motivations to pandemic phases. So a dashboard like this could be applied for use by public safety officers to address areas in need. This study expanded my skills in data cleaning, spatial analysis, and interactive visualization, and gave me valuable experience working across platforms. Some of my sources and references, I'd like to acknowledge the City of Denver for providing open access to crime and demographic data, without which this analysis would not have been possible. So thank you for your time today. I invite you to explore my Tableau dashboard with the QR code on the screen, and I open it to questions now. Thank you.